Timcast IRL will be live in Miami with Patrick Bet David, Donald Trump Jr., Matt Gaetz, and Luke Rudkowski. Join us there. Get your tickets by clicking the link in the description below or by going to timcast.com. I got to jump to this story from the Post Millennial before I get into the question I have for you. This is Ken Paxton reveals to Tucker Carlson that Biden administration lawyers were part of his impeachment investigation in Texas. So, of course, Ken Paxton, interviewed by Tucker, even went on to say that he believes 2020 was fraud, that stopping the ballot counting in Georgia was so that they can, this is what he said. He said they wanted to see how many votes they needed. There's a lot of questions around the DOJ's involvement in targeting Trump supporters over the 2020 election. And one of the big conversations that I hear quite a bit is defund the FBI, take away the funding for the DOJ. If they're going to be political and target Trump supporters with these disproportionate charges, you get a guy, he gets a couple of years from burning down a police station, and then some other guy knocks over a barricade, gets 2 decades. I'm curious where the conversation is right now in Congress around defunding these law enforcement agencies for the disproportionate.
It's central to the last 48 hours because the McCarthy CR that we had to kill was sort of based on the proposition that by surrendering every fight that wasn't the border and picking only the border fight, that we could isolate an issue that really, brought Republicans like me in concert with Eric Adams, the Democrat mayor of New York. I and many others were unwilling to go along with that tactic precisely because to surrender the fight at the Department of Justice and the FBI and the weaponization that is occurring there, is just not palatable. And it's not just that stuff you worry about and that constellation of problems the federal government has doesn't just emerge in the DOJ and the FBI. I told you that the Homeland Security bill is one of the ones that's in this 4-bill package that we're going to begin to move. And there's a lot of concerns about CISA, these entities at Homeland Security that do a lot of domestic surveillance, that are evaluating political speech that is posted on social media, that are creating threat tags around various types of First Amendment protected activity. So that's hard work, but I'd rather do that while looking only at the Department of Homeland Security than do that while looking at the Department of Homeland Security and the Post Office.
Right. So, well, what's your position? I mean, should there be cuts to the FBI, the DOJ, CIA?
CISA? Listen, we're way past the X-Acto knife with those agencies. We've got to pull out the meat cleaver. And I think that,
not at all.
Well, I think that really what we've got to do is return the FBI to a law enforcement agency, not an intelligence collection entity. Really, the Comeyization of the FBI altered the perspective of the FBI. They don't look at crimes and try to catch people committing crimes. They try to become predictive of what's going to happen in the future. And when they become predictive and then align that with a really left-leaning turn, and then can overlay this great fear that like the MAGA grandmother next door might be a domestic terrorist, that creates the cauldron of weaponization.
I'm curious as we switch into, assuming you switch into single subject spending bills, where Democrats will fall on a lot of these issues. Because if you've got something in there that has to do with a program they just are totally indifferent towards, right? I'm sure you would probably know better than me, but I got a super chat here saying defund the FBI, the ATF. I'm wondering where a lot of Democrats would fall if someone said, hey, we want to provide X amount of dollars to this agency, say, the FBI, the CIA. I'd imagine some of them might just be like, I literally don't care one way or another, and could be swayed to either not support or support it. Whereas if you have an omnibus, they're going to say yes no matter what, right?
Well, interestingly, what is defining how the Democrats view a lot of these things is abortion. On the defense appropriations bill, we have certain restrictions on how money can be used so that the Department of Defense isn't an abortion travel agency. And for that and that alone, every Democrat will vote against the defense spending bill. I've gone to some of them and said, like, this builds a new $200 million hangar in your district. This brings aircraft into your state or into your community, and they don't give a shit. If they're like, they are so, I would say, driven by this abortion issue that takes them all off the bill. Then the agriculture bill, there's this big debate about these pills that get mailed out, and the FDA's kind of regulation of that is kind of gets wrapped up into ag FDA. So even the agriculture bill, they'll find a way to kind of wrap in with abortion.
So here's what you do. Whatever the spending is cut down to in terms of some way going to abortion, break it up further and then have like the minor abortion funding bill, please sign it. And it says This bill allows for the funding of abortions in your state up to X million dollars and abolishes the Department of Education.
See, now you've divorced yourself from the single subject spending paradigm. Now you're playing the log rolling game, Tim.
Right.
You've gone establishment on me.
Well, so no, but that's the point. I mean, if you have to collect votes on funding for the ATF, how many Democrats are going to be very enthusiastic about signing a bill to provide funding to the ATF?
All of them, because they believe that gun violence is the next great national emergency that might justify locking us all in our homes and dictating how we live our lives. And the ATF is central to how to kind of gun scare people into a real restriction of their liberties.
How many Republicans would be in favor of not abolishing, but defunding to any degree the ATF?
I think we have a number of Republicans who will support some cuts, but let me give you an example of what we face. I had a Republican stand up and say, one of my concerns is, look, we centralize a lot of these FBI people in Washington, D.C., and they all become politicians because CNN's taking them to a Washington Nationals game, and ABC's wanting to develop a source, so they all become kind of media politicians. So we wanted less of that going on in D.C. So they've got a proposal for a $325 million new facility in the D.C. area, and I thought we should not fund that. We should keep them at the J. Edgar Hoover building where they belong. And a Republican stood up and said, I won't support taking $1 off of that new FBI building because then we will be the party of defunding the police.
Well, you're laughing, but they've already used that line over and over.
I know.
That's not like a fake thing. Like the Democrats have used that line, saying the Republicans are the ones.
Republicans should say yes. I'd be like, sure.
Well, nobody thinks that the CISA agent spying on their Facebook page is the same as the cop who keeps their neighborhood safe. Like, no one actually believes. I don't think that while the Democrats keep saying that, I think the American people are smart enough to appreciate that distinction.
But I just don't see that as a winning strategy for Democrats who have constituents who are angry with policing in their districts and their cities, especially as it pertains to Black Lives Matter, to try and then shift it to the Republicans or defunding the police. And then all you got to do is come out and be like, well, the issue was that we were concerned about the lives of our Black and brown friends and family members. So yeah, that's us. Next question. And then they're going to be like, wait, what? Let them give up one of their key talking points. They raised like hundreds of millions of dollars off the concept that police were bad. They don't want to give that away. Shift all of their good social justice activists onto Republicans.
Well, this is why they're seeing an erosion in minority support among the Democrats.
For sure.
They're not stupid.
Well, isn't that the driving issue in New York?
Absolutely. Well, it is. And now, oddly enough, immigration has become a driving issue.
Right.
Who could have thought? Look, one of the greatest pieces of political theater I've seen in my lifetime is having Greg Abbott and Florida sending up migrants to blue cities. And to watch the apoplexion of the blue mayors is beyond belief. I mean, to see the mayor of Chicago say it's inhumane to send them to Chicago, I'm like, now you see my point. I've been saying that for years.
I love it's just, how do you describe it? We all sit here trying our best to be good stewards of this nation, good stewards of this earth, of humanity. And we politely and respectfully say, hey, unwatched, unregulated illegal immigration is causing problems for everybody, including the migrants. And they tell you to shut up. They call you racist. They call you a bigot. And then we say, okay, well, if you disagree, then this works out. We'll send them your way because you want to help them out and you don't like the way we run things. And now apoplectic.
No
screaming.
Single issue showed the hypocrisy of the left than this, right? When they jumped up and down and said, New York is a sanctuary city. Well, until you actually send them to me, and then we're not a sanctuary city anymore. Now we want them the hell out of here.
Well, Adam said New York will be destroyed.
That's right.
Isn't that all because of the right to shelter law that they have? Like in New York, you have a right. The government is obligated to provide you shelter. And that doesn't exist elsewhere. And so by extending socialism, they became a magnet for what now they claim ails them.
Well, tell that the tens of thousands of homeless people I see on my streets in Manhattan every single day who are not being housed or home. But the best part is that what they try to do is they try to frame the homelessness issue as an economic issue, not as an issue of mental illness or drug abuse.
Right.
Because when they frame it that way, what's their ultimate goal? They want to take down capitalism. But they say, look, capitalism has led to this. This is why they're homeless, not because they're mentally ill, which they all are.
And this is what really pisses me off because I've worked for homeless shelters before. I have dealt with the issue of the homeless. And guess what? Why aren't these homeless people in shelters? Why aren't they in homes? Why aren't they working? They don't want to be. No. And this is exactly what my experience was. It's the experience of the people that I worked with. They'd say, you go up to one of these individuals and you say, how would you like to have a room and board? And there's like minor restrictions. You can't do drugs. They're like, no, never going to happen. They want to be out on the streets. These people are often content with having their, their tent and their mattress where they can go into the bridge and do whatever they want, do drugs, or they're incapable of supporting themselves. But of course, the left says it's an issue of, I love the line they say, did you know that there are more empty houses than homeless? And I'm like, sure, but I mean, if you put a mentally unstable individual who's struggling to wash themselves and work into a house, it's just going to fall apart around them. It's not going to improve their life. You're basically saying you want to hide the problem.
But Democrats will deny that it's a mental illness or drug problem. They literally will deny it.
Right.
They'll say, no, that's a small minority. They literally tell you this. It's a small minority of people. By the way, they all based it on this one study was done at UCLA. And the study, I looked into how they did the study. How was the study accomplished? They literally walked up to homeless people and they said, are you mentally ill? And they would say no. And they put down no. I'm not kidding. That's how the study was done. And they quote that study all day long.
Yeah, well, I walked up to a homeless guy and he had a bottle of red wine and he was just chugging from it. And I was like, you doing okay, man? And he went, Saturday morning, or something, like just muttered and said nonsensical words. His face was beet red. And I was like, I don't know how you help this guy if he can't communicate with you. And I mean,
but was it either Saturday or the morning?
It wasn't.
I was hoping it was one or the other.
Yeah. It was a weekday. It was like a Wednesday. And we're like, we want to try and figure out how we can help these guys. And then, don't get me wrong, I've met homeless people who are totally of sound mind, who are in hard circumstances. But the issues with those guys is they take help almost immediately. I tell the story of a guy I met who was older and he became homeless because he lost his job. These guys tend to accept the help instantly, go to the shelter, and then they're back on their feet very, very quickly. If someone finds themselves homeless, holding up a sign.
They're not chronically homeless.
Right. Correct. And then, were we to go up to someone and say, hey, you really do want a job? You want to get off the streets? Be like, please help me. Yes. It's problem solved. But the overwhelming majority were people who were just like, stay away from me. And then they would go between cars and just take a dump in the middle of the street.
There is a solution. And I thought about it a lot. And the solution is, I'm for individual rights. That's a big part of who I am. I think we have to reinstitutionalize people. I think we have to spend money to build hospitals that are warm, loving environments where they can get treatment and then get help and then get food. And we have to force them.
How do you think, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
But how do you think we'll not make the same mistake that happened before? Or at least the situation, like the institution degraded to the point where people were getting abused pretty regularly. I don't know. I wasn't there. My parents both worked.
I got it.
Better tech.
Well, right. I mean, the opportunities now to have better oversight, better facilities. Look at the way prisons have changed in their construction and how inmates are, able to be cared for and observed with fewer staff, more cameras, AI technology, sensor technology, communications technology, different types of displays that you have available. So I think that we're not going to go back to like the 1960s and 70s version of institution. Yeah, we're not going back to that world. We could do this in a more modernized way.
Yeah,
it's a solvable problem.
Webcams, if you let people that are in the institution communicate with their families, they won't feel so isolated. That's a big part of it. And then you can even have somebody like a therapist watching the call if you want, and they can be taking notes and they know they're being watched.
Depending on the diagnoses.
Sure.
Yeah,
it'd be like a privilege you could earn from good behavior.
Well, I think the default should be that you have free communications.
I think that should happen in jail
free access,
too, personally.
Free activities. You can come and go from your room as you please. And then depending on the severity of the suffering of the individual, like if they're prone to delusions and then violence, then we say, okay, now we're going to detain you because you're a threat to others. But for a lot of these people who are let's just say they're not capable of supporting themselves due to a lack of cognitive capabilities. Well, you can come and go from your room as you please. You're a nice individual. You're not causing anyone harm. Here's board games. Here's food. But you're off the streets. You're not covered in filth. You're not doing drugs. You're not drinking. You're not crapping on the ground. And we're actually trying to help you.
What's more humane?
I know it is laughably absurd. The idea is leave them out to crap in the streets. And that's what San Francisco is. No, these people are not being helped by being left to roam on their own of their own devices and just live in the corner of buildings and in their own ways.
It's dangerous for other people too, having to step over those people and if they get hungry, if one guy snaps and he's got a sharp piece of glass on him, you got to.
Or they're just doing drugs, man. Did you?
You would think it's a nonpartisan issue, but the reality is, we're talking about wedge issues before. It's they use it, they want it because they use it as a wedge issue. Say, look at the how horrible our economic system is today.
I want to jump to the story.
Why wouldn't it work as a wedge issue for like as a Florida man? I don't really understand the homelessness thing because we have less of a societal tolerance for it. We just tell people you can't set up encampments. I mean, we do what we can as a state to be compassionate, like you say, for those who want help. But you don't see these things in Florida like you see them in LA or New York. And like, I don't understand why the argument isn't more compelling. Like, hey, I'll get these people to leave and quality of life will be better. Is that too simplistic as a political message?
We're just shuffling them off somewhere else. I think we have to find a more sustainable solution.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.